All right, welcome to Hoops Tonight here at The Volume. Happy Tuesday, everybody. Happy New Year. Hope all of you guys are kicking the new year off right, having productive weeks. We got a jam-packed show for you today. I wanted to cover Bradley Beal returning to the Suns, but I wanted to cover a quality opponent in doing so. We're going to hit Magic Suns from a few days ago. The Pacers got another win over the Bucks last night in Milwaukee and really dominated them in the second half. So we're going to break down that game. I thought it revealed a lot of stuff about both teams. I wanted to talk a little bit about OG Anunoby's debut with the New York Knicks, which was interesting in some ways while also demonstrating some area of opportunity. And then last but not least, we have our latest edition of the Power Rankings. You guys know the drill. Before we get started, subscribe to our brand new YouTube channel. It would mean a lot to me if you guys would take a second to scroll down and hit that subscribe button. Don't forget about our podcast feeds, wherever you get your podcasts under Hoops Tonight. Follow me on Twitter at _JasonLT so you guys don't miss any show announcements or the film threads that I do. I did a extensive film thread this morning on the issues that the Milwaukee Bucks were having at the point of attack. Also some highlights of the Pacers guards barbecuing them. You can find that on my Twitter feed. And the last but not least, keep dropping mailbag questions in the YouTube comments so that we can hit them later on in the week. All right, let's talk some basketball. So there's a concept that I talk about a lot on this show, the concept of aggregate ball handling. What that means is, like, if you take any five-man grouping and you have one outstanding ball handler, but the other four guys can't dribble well, you have great top-end ball handling, but you don't have great down the roster, like, aggregate ball handling. Teams like that would, to demonstrate that, would be a team like the Dallas Mavericks, for instance, right? Where Luka Doncic is this incredible ball handler, but down the roster, they don't have great ball handling. One of the advantages of aggregate ball handling is it gives you the ability to make multiple attacks at an elite defense, which sometimes is the best way to beat an elite defense. A lot of times when it comes to the top tier defenses in the league, your first action is not going to get the job done. Your first action might get you a little bit of an advantage somewhere on the floor, and you need to take that little advantage and expand it into a greater advantage, and so on and so forth until you get a great shot. And I actually clipped two examples this morning on my Twitter feed at _JasonLT, where you guys can see some video examples of this, where it's, KD is running a ball screen and he kind of gets downhill and he makes a kickback pass to Devin Booker on the wing, who then rips to the left and gets downhill and makes a kick out pass to Bradley Beal, who makes one extra pass to the wing to Grayson Allen, who pump fakes and drives to the lane and finishes at the rim. And it's like, if you watch the defense on that possession, it's a very well defended play by an Orlando Magic team that has a ton of athletes and is excellent in help side. That is their strength. That's what the Magic do best. Even in this recent stretch where the Magic are really struggling, they're defending really well. They're huge. They're athletic. They have high motor. They have excellent point of attack defenders. And so you're not going to just get a lot of easy shots, right? And the Suns just did an immaculate job in this particular game of that high level closeout attacking. And what it helps is, like, we talk so much about the off ball rolls and we focus so much on shooting, and it's actually a misconception when it comes to spacing, where people just think, oh, I need to have a 45% three-point shooter on the weak side. Well, if you've got a team, especially a defensive scheme that rotates really hard and chases guys off the line, all of a sudden spot-up shooting doesn't mean nearly as much as the actual ability to make reads and attack closeouts, right? That it becomes more valuable. And what's interesting is guys like Devin Booker and Bradley Beal and Kevin Durant, those are guys that we primarily see in on-ball roles, but by virtue of having three of them on the floor, you get to see lots of examples of them playing with an advantage. And when you give top tier scorers like that an advantage, like a defender sprinting at them, they can make the game look really easy at times, and they did, as they stiff-armed the Magic throughout this game. Even when the Magic briefly took a lead in the early fourth quarter, where Franz Wagner was picking on Chimezie Metu in switches and was just beating him off the dribble, and then the Suns had to try to blitz to try to prevent that switch, and then Franz Wagner hit the short roll man, which led to a quick kick-out three, I think, for Gary Harris on the left wing, and they briefly took a 1-point lead. But then Bradley Beal got a couple of buckets, and the Suns just regained control of the game. Never really felt like they didn't have the more functional half-court offense in this particular game as they ran away with it. And you even saw at stretches after the Suns were driving, kicking them to death early. Then you saw these possessions where it's like Kevin Durant running a pick and roll off of the right wing and getting downhill, and it's Bradley Beal and Devin Booker on the left wing, left corner, and their guys are just hugged up on them. And so KD's just working by himself, getting into the lane. And on this particular possession, he ended up smoking the layup, but he engaged Bitadze at the rim, and so Nurkic ended up getting a putback anyway. But like if you watch Bradley Beal and Devin Booker on the weak side, and the Magic just aren't helping. There's another one where Bradley Beal is driving off of a left wing pick and roll, and Kevin Durant and Devin Booker are on the weak side. Kevin Durant's on the right wing extended, and he's been deadly with above the break 3-point shooting this year, right? Devin Booker in the right wing. Magic players glued up to him. As a result, Bradley Beal got to get all the way downhill and patiently work to get a shot off at the rim against Anthony Black. I actually trimmed both of those clips as well. You guys can see them on the Twitter feed. But the moral of the story here is when you have this much offensive skill on the floor, the game gets a lot easier. And again, a lot of the struggles that the Suns had earlier in the year, you take Brad Beal out of the equation, you put in a much lesser offensive player, it starts to look more like a traditional two-star, configuration like we see everywhere around the league. And suddenly those weak side players, they don't seem like they have enough firepower to make it work. Kevin Durant, Devin Booker fatigue. They get into the fourth quarter. The aggressive defense starts to force turnovers. The Suns start to miss even the open shots that they get, and it can crater, right? But then you throw Brad Beal into the equation. Even the guys like Grayson Allen and Eric Gordon, Yusuf Nurkic, or Chimezie Metu, who's actually been playing a lot for the group lately, those guys suddenly get slotted into more achievable roles. You've got Bradley Beal, Devin Booker consistently working in closeout opportunities. Everything looks a lot easier. The other thing I like about Brad Beal is he brings a very different type of attack to what Kevin Durant and Devin Booker bring to the table. Devin Booker is a good athlete. Kevin Durant is has a great physical frame, but neither of those guys are like outstanding slashers. But Bradley Beal is actually a top-tier athlete for his position when he's healthy, and he brings a lot of downhill force to the table. And when Franz Wagner went on that run in the fourth quarter as the Magic took the lead, it was Bradley Beal's rim pressure that actually got them back into the lead. There was a possession where he got Wendell Carter Jr. on a switch, and he was able to just beat him off the dribble, like just toast him off the dribble and get all the way to the rim. That's a downhill athlete play. Like that probably ends up in a pull-up jump shot if it's Kevin Durant or Devin Booker, right? There was another play where they picked him up full court. It was like the very next possession, and they're trying to apply ball pressure. One of the best ways to beat ball pressure is to just be the bigger, stronger athlete and go past him to the rim. And Bradley Beal just toasted him off the dribble and got all the way to the rim. I think that fit makes a ton of sense. You even saw one of the things I talked about a lot when the Suns were struggling was that KD's defense wasn't as good as it can be, and a lot of that came down to workload. I thought KD had one of his best defensive games of the season against the Magic. Early in the game, he had a couple of steals in just the first few possessions playing in passing lanes. He was bothering a ton of shots at the rim. You have to have the energy to do that, though. And when he's required to do that much more offensively, you can expect his defensive effort to wane. That's just normal, especially for a guy in his late 30s. And so I thought all of it just seems to make a lot more sense with Bradley Beal in the group. A very, very encouraging sign. And one of the big reasons why I've been saying all year with the Suns, like, my concerns with them are still there as it pertains to the bigger matchups in the Western Conference, right? Teams like the Wolves, teams like the Nuggets, teams like the Lakers. But I think writing them off was silly because the entire configuration of the team was designed to involve all three of those guys. Like, they know they're not as big and strong on the front, but they're going to have a ton of offensive skill on the floor, more offensive skill on the floor than just about anybody they play, and that's going to be their advantage. If they can play to that advantage, if they can drive and kick for layups and threes more often than they drive for tough mid-range pull-up jump shots, and they fit that offensive shot profile that they need to fit, they have a chance. They have a chance with that kind of talent on the floor. On the Magic front, Paolo and Franz were both great. Like I said, Franz had this really cool stretch in the middle fourth quarter where he was picking apart the Suns, particularly attacking Chimezie Metu. The major thing that kind of got in the way for them is Jalen Suggs was really struggling to knock down spot-up threes, especially on the wings. And as a result, after he missed a couple, especially in the fourth quarter, the Suns just started ignoring him and then throwing that third defender in two-man game or extra defender in ISOs, and they were able to slow down the Magic offense, which we'll get to when we get to power rankings, is really, really struggling as of late. All I want for the holidays this year is some NBA action. This week, new customers can score $150 instantly in bonus bets just for betting $5. An instant dub just for you guys. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code HOOPS. New customers can get $150 instantly in bonus bets for betting just $5 on basketball. Only on DraftKings Sportsbook with code HOOPS. The crown is yours. All right, moving on to the Pacers and the Bucks. Classic matchup of speed versus size, a matchup that we've seen a lot over the last couple of weeks between the in-season tournament, the week after, and then last night's game. And, speed manifests in very different ways than size does, right? Speed manifests beating the floor, the team down the floor in transition. It manifests when a guy cuts to the rim. Like there was a late cut from Ben Mathurin down the stretch of this game where like when he hit the Jets to cut into that opening, it just caught everybody off guard because of how fast he is, right? Like speed attacking the glass. The Pacers performed better on the offensive glass than the Bucks did, which you would expect would be an advantage to the Bucks with their size, but with so much three-point shooting in the NBA now, rebounding has gone from a size game to a ball pursuit game. And having speed on the floor helps you pursue the ball easier, as the Pacers outworked the Bucks in many cases. But the biggest example of the speed advantage for the Pacers in this game was at the point of attack. Primarily Tyrese Haliburton and TJ McConnell, but also Ben Mathurin as well. All three of those guys were just consistently, nothing fancy, just go down the floor, beat the guy off the dribble, and play basketball from there. TJ McConnell in particular, he's been doing this all year. It's so funny because teams have been, I think overlooking him in a certain way as a bench guard. But like TJ McConnell's been one of the best dribble drive guys, just beating that first line of defense and getting the defense into rotation, combined with his ability to pass and obviously everything that brings to the table. They were running a little interchange there in the fourth quarter where basically Tyrese Haliburton would come and like do a little dribble handoff to TJ McConnell and he'd get Malik Beasley on a switch and just barrel right through him to the basket and get all the way to the rim. He had like a little short turnaround jumper and drew a foul on him that way. He's also like deceptively big and strong. They're just really, really fast, difficult to contain, and they have guys that can finish plays, and it makes them that much tougher to guard. Tyrese Haliburton in his last 5 games, 26 points, 5 rebounds, and 16 assists, with only 2 turnovers per game on 52% from the field, 40% from 3. They've won 4 games in a row, all against really good teams. Nobody can keep them from generating quality shots. It's funny because like a lot of people, we're not going to talk about the Lakers today, but a lot of people have been going on the Lakers and the Pacers since the in-season tournament, as both teams, obviously by virtue of the tough schedule there, kind of dipped a little bit. And I think people got off the Pacers scent again. I think people are off the Lakers scent too. As bad as the Lakers have been, they're still top 10 in both half-court offense and defense. They have a trade to make, and they have 2 top 10 players in the league. I think it's foolish to write them off. I think it's foolish to write the Pacers off. These are teams that that in-season tournament schedule was brutal. And to turn around and to play a tough schedule the following week, the Pacers took a dip, but they are a good team. They're not a serious championship contender with the lack of frontline athleticism and size, but they could be a player in the trade deadline this year. And like Tyrese Haliburton, in my opinion, is an all-time great in the making. I've said this on the show before, but I don't look at him as just a guy who could be a superstar. I look at him as a guy who could be like Steph and Nikola Jokic, as transformative offensive talents that are engines for top 5 offenses for a decade and a half, and just surefire Hall of Famers, guys who could be in the Pantheon one day. That's what I look at as Tyrese Haliburton as. And I know I'm on the high end there. I know some people are a little bit lower on him, but I think he's that special. He completely picked the Bucks apart down the stretch, just taking little 15-foot pull-up jump shots over the top of Brook Lopez in his drop coverage. He's just unbelievable. And like we talk about all the time on the show, step one in the process of team building for an NBA championship is find the guy. And he's got to be one of the guys. Now, Tyrese Halliburton is not that guy necessarily yet. He's got to polish up some things defensively, and obviously we'll see how his game translates to the postseason, but I think he's on a freight train to that level, and I'd be shocked if he doesn't get there. It's super, super encouraging. On the Bucks front, just a complete and total lack of resistance at the point of attack. The Bucks had were up 15 in the middle of the third quarter, and it was like, not only did the wheels come off, it was like every single time down the floor, the Pacers got whatever they wanted. It was one of the most problematic and concerning defensive performances I've seen from a serious championship contender in a long time. I clipped a thread of all the plays this morning, and it's like 20 clips long of oh, you guys got a bucket? Cool. TJ McConnell brought the ball up the floor and just beat his man off the dribble for a layup. Oh, you got another bucket? TJ McConnell came up the floor, just toasted by Chris Middleton and dropped it off to Ben Mathurin at the basket. They get a stop. Here they come down the floor. TJ McConnell attacking Malik Beasley again. Here's Tyrese Halliburton getting wherever he wants. Oh, Ben Mathurin, left wing against Damian Lillard, cleared side. I'm just going to dribble right through him to the basket for a layup. It was kind of embarrassing. And one of the things that I've said consistently with the Bucks is I view them, again, I look at all the teams kind of in tiers, and to me, the Celtics and the Nuggets are in the top tier as teams that, as currently constructed, have serious chances to win the title. And even though the Bucks have been a very good regular season team, I view a drop-off from that tier to the Bucks, to the Lakers, to the Timberwolves, to the Suns. That next group to me is every one of those teams needs to make a trade. They just do. I don't care how many regular season games the Bucks win. I don't care that the Lakers won the in-season tournament. I don't care that the Wolves are the number 1 seed in the West. To me, the Wolves aren't good enough in half-court defense. The Lakers don't have point-of-attack defenders that can also score, and the Bucks have 0 point-of-attack defenders. And so it becomes a serious issue when every single team you play against, their guards are just comfortable. And again, there's a difference because a lot of times people buy into this shot result thing. It's oh, we made Tyrese Halliburton take contested pull-up twos down the stretch of a close basketball game. And you might have your analytics professionals telling you oh man, contested pull-up twos are only worth X points per shot. We'll live with that. But there's, again, the statistic means, have you ever heard the expression that statistic means nothing to the individual? The statistic means nothing to the individual possession. It's not a contested 15-footer as one of 1,000 contested mid-range pull-ups that are all the same. All of them are different. Sometimes there's really good ball pressure and the guy has to work really hard to get separation over the screen and the contest on the mid-range is better. Maybe there's back pressure. There's a lot of these things that make him uncomfortable that will lead to a miss. Whereas if the dude's just walking into pull-up jump shots with 0 back pressure, with 0 physical ball pressure, with 0, a very mild contest from Brook Lopez coming out of the drop, I don't care what your analytical professionals say. That's a high percentage shot. And he made 3 of them down the stretch of the game and beat you guys. And you can, again, it to me, that is why point of attack defense is such a vitally important part of an NBA defense. It's not just about forcing a team to take the right shots. From the opening tip of the game, you have to make the opposing ball handler feel uncomfortable in some way, shape, or form. If you do, he'll have to work harder and fight through it, and he'll take some bad shots. He'll not feel as confident, and that's how you can force a guy into a 10 for 23 night instead of a 15 for 23 night. That's the difference, in my opinion. It's comfort. It's rhythm. When you go to the gym and you do cone shooting, if you're a young basketball player that's working on perimeter shot creation, when I do my shooting drills, I will do that rip through pull-up shooting drill that I've told you guys about on the show before. I catch and I rip to the right and I do a counter move and I go back to the left and I take a pull-up jump shot. You know what's great when I'm shooting by myself? It's comfort. I feel like I'm doing a shooting drill, right? Because I'm by myself. When the defense in an NBA game is allowing Tyrese Halliburton to feel like he's shooting in cone drills, He's going to make shots at a much higher percentage relative to what the giant sample size might tell you over the course of the season. Because the other pull-up 15-footers Tyrese is taking is against better point-of-attack defense. It's a significant issue. To put it simply, you are not beating Boston unless you find a way to make ball handlers more uncomfortable. Like, has anybody seen how well Derek White is playing this year? He's killing teams with a combination of beating guys off the dribble and making reads, finishing at the rim, and he's shooting his pull-up three-point shot really, really well. Like, that's just Derek White. It's like, okay, we have Giannis and we have Chris Middleton for Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. Great. Who's guarding Drew and Derek White? Like, meanwhile, on the other end of the floor, Derek White is going to be in Damian Lillard's personal space 48 minutes, well, however long he plays, 7 games in a 7-game series. See how that one matchup could and what'll happen is at the end of the series, people will be like, Dame didn't shoot very well. It's shot variance. And it's like, no, the Celtics are just better at making your guards feel uncomfortable than the Bucks are at making your guards feel uncomfortable. To me, it is a fatal flaw. Like, are the teams in that other tier, the Suns and the Timberwolves and the Bucks and the Lakers, can they win the title as currently constructed? Sure, but it's a super long shot. You need a ton of stuff to go well. You need a bunch of guys to play above their pay grade. You need your opponents to shoot poorly. You need a bunch of things to go your way. And it's just unrealistic to expect it to go that way. All of those teams need upgrades. And for the Bucks, they need an athletic guard that they can put next to Dame that's at least okay on the offensive end of the floor to the point where he's not a liability. That's what they need. A guy that can pick up primary point of attack assignments. That's what they need so that they always are slotted properly and that everything makes sense. I said in training camp, Malik Beasley can shoot, didn't shoot well for the Lakers. Maybe he'll shoot well. He has shot well for the Bucks, but he was never at any point a reliable point of attack defender, and the Bucks were relying on him to be that. It was doomed to fail. And again, I understand that the standings look good and the Bucks have the second best record in the East and the third or fourth best record in the league, but it's not about winning regular season games. It's can you beat Boston in a 7-game series? And right now, I think that flaw gets them beat against Boston. One last thing on the Bucks. Damian Lillard had some comments after the game about his offensive role because the Bucks offense really struggled down the stretch as well. They had a 105 offensive rating in the second half, and Dame had this interesting comment after the game basically talking about him being off the ball more. And to be clear, he's right about that. Like, there is a reality to like when your touches change. Like when you go from feeling the ball in your hands all the time to where like you're still involved a lot, but it's like a lot more like sometimes I'm giving the ball to Giannis and Chris a lot. Brooke is a guy that's pretty aggressive offensively. So like it's much more of an equal opportunity type of offense. And it is a struggle for Dame. And he's really struggling. He's cratered again in his last, in shooting over the last couple of weeks. We'll dive into that a little bit further when we get into the power rankings. But like he is right. Like this is a different role. And it does take time. And quite frankly, they need to figure that out because I don't think this defense is going to be good enough to be the foundation for them to win a championship. They're going to have to enter into that Denver level of inevitability on offense. And it's just going to take time. They've got another 50 games or so, but they're going to have to figure out how to get Dame comfortable in his new role. All right, lastly, before we get to the power rankings, I wanted to talk a little bit about OG Anunoby's first game with the Knicks. Impressive win as the Knicks beat the Minnesota Timberwolves. On offense, you saw the benefit of OG Anunoby right away. Hit, 3 corner threes. I talked a lot about how so many Knicks games in recent weeks were ended, like it's like a tic-tac-toe, right? Like it's like Jalen Brunson makes a play at the point of attack that draws multiple defenders. He hits the roll man or hits the guy on the wing who drives and kicks, or the roll man, makes a read out of the short roll, and then the ball just ends up in RJ Barrett's hands on the wing, and he can't shoot, especially against the closeout. And so just so many of those possessions would end that way. And it's like OG Anunoby is just a much better, both contested and uncontested catch and shoot shooter. And like he's going to make the corner threes in a way that RJ Barrett can't. The second big thing that stood out to me is just his athleticism. Again, this is a type of athlete that the Knicks just did not have on the roster, like an actually perimeter quick tall guy. They just didn't have this, right? And like you saw it in a bunch of different ways. Specifically, they worked him in the dunker spot a lot, where like he would just kind of meander down there when he saw an opening, and he has that ability to, on the catch, just immediately go up and dunk it with two hands, and he's got the strength to fight through contact, which is just it's like a release valve in a lot of ways. When he's cutting to the rim, he had a cut on like a little banana cut over the right into the middle of the floor where he caught and went up and dunked it with two hands. I think he got a foul on that one too. Like he just has like, it's almost like a real rim pressure from the off-ball positions. You know what I mean? And then as just an athlete in transition, he had a big one-handed dunk in transition where he was running his lane. I think he's just going to make them so much better on the offensive end of the floor, and I thought you saw that immediately. Now, defensively was a chore. They put him on Anthony Edwards to start the game. And the Timberwolves are an excellent screening team, and OG was really struggling to fight over the top of screens, and so Ant did get downhill a lot. I've talked about this before, but like the Knicks might want to experiment with switching just because of the size of their front line. And OG Anunoby being a big body that can be easy to screen sometimes. And we'll see, maybe it's just one game, so I don't want to overreact, and we'll see what kind of scheme ends up working best for them. The other thing, too, is the Knicks, as currently constructed, are not a rim protection team. They don't have like a big old rim protector, especially since Mitchell Robinson's hurt. And so an over-the-top chasing kind of on-ball scheme serves to funnel, and you only really want to funnel when you have excellent rim protection. So it might be interesting. We'll see over a larger sample size, but it might be interesting to see the Knicks try to do some more switching because OG Anunoby can guard bigger players, because they can have like a team-wide help and recover scheme to try to help them do okay in mismatches. They also have some guards that are like surprisingly big and strong, and that can be something that is useful in switching as well. But we'll see in the big picture what they decide to do. Got in foul trouble too. A couple of really bad calls. There's a rebounding foul that I didn't like, and then his sixth foul was just an atrocious call. He was just fighting through a Gobert screen, and it was pretty innocuous contact, and the ref just took him out of the game. Something I'm not a huge fan of, but it is what it is. But overall, I thought it was an impressive debut for OG Anunoby, a clear demonstration of the ceiling-raising ability that he has. All right, moving on to our power rankings. So we have two teams dropping out this week. The Orlando Magic went 1-2 this week. They've lost 8 of their last 13 games, and they're 26th in offense over that span. So they're out of the power rankings for the time being. Also, the Dallas Mavericks, they went 1-2 this week, lost 7 of their last 11 games. In that span, it's weird. They're 25th in offense and 16th in defense over that span. But Kyrie Irving is back now. That should help them settle down. I played his first game last night, looked rusty, but with him coming back, that should help them get back on track offensively. Alrighty, number 10, the New Orleans Pelicans. They've won 7 of their last 10 games, culminating in a quality win over the Lakers on Sunday. They're top 5 in offense and defense over that span. Brandon Ingram, Zion Williamson, and CJ McCollum are all averaging over 20 points per game very efficiently over that span. They're rebounding super well. They're 3rd in defensive rebound percentage over that span. And on defense, a couple of guys I want to shout out. Brandon Ingram is having a ridiculous stretch of off-ball defense, getting a ton of deflections and blocks and steals and blowing up plays. It's been a theme all season. Those of you guys who have been listening to the show have heard me talk about it, but recently it's gone even up a level. Brandon Ingram has the tools, kind of like we've talked about with Kevin Durant, to be an outstanding defensive player. It's just a question of commitment, and there have been stretches where he does and stretches where he doesn't. He's in a stretch where he has been doing it, and it's made them that much more formidable on defense. Jose Alvarado was a menace in that Lakers game as well. Just a literal wrecking ball blowing things up. Not just the from behind steals, but also just attacking the basketball when it's in front of him in transition. He was having success there as well. Pelicans are playing some good ball right now. The first time on our power rankings at number 10. Number 9, the Indiana Pacers. They've won 4 in a row, all 4 wins against good teams. They went down to Houston and beat the Rockets in Houston. Not easy to do. They went into Chicago and beat a red-hot Bulls team. That's not easy to do. Then they beat the Knicks. The Knicks are a good team. And then they went into Milwaukee and beat the Bucks. Like we mentioned earlier, Tyrese Halliburton in his last 5 games, 26 points, 5 rebounds, and 16 assists with only 2 turnovers per game on 52% from the field and 40% from 3. And then I wanted to shout out TJ McConnell. He's just been such a good bench guard this year. not just at the point of attack offensively beating people off the dribble and making plays, but he's also been a very, very good point of attack defensive player and just an overall disruptor and energizer bunny that just continues the wave, the onslaught of what the Pacers bring as part of that Tyrese Halliburton experience. And then they even play the two of them together, and then they just start to pick you apart driving and kicking. I did a lot of Pacers talk earlier in the show for those of you guys who are watching the breakout clip, so make sure you check out the Pacers Bucks breakdown from earlier today. Number 8, the Denver Nuggets. They beat the Grizzlies and Hornets, but then they got demolished by the Thunder at home. Now, Aaron Gordon was out for that game because of the unfortunate dog bite that he suffered over Christmas. But as I've said frequently about the Nuggets, when it comes to their top 5, I trust them more than anyone else in the league. That's why they're my number 1 championship favorite at this point. But their vulnerability is a lack of depth. If you lose Aaron Gordon, you're nowhere near as physically imposing as you are with him. If you lose Michael Porter Jr., your weak side shooting craters, and suddenly it's a lot easier to throw multiple bodies at the Jokic-Murray two-man game. No Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. Now you have to play your point of attack defenders that are nowhere near as good offensively. Same issue. You can start to load up on the two-man game. No Jamal Murray. There is no two-man game. The offense becomes way easier to guard, or at least that you go to a much lower level two-man game. So the point is, this is the best team in the league, but another great example, I've always said that 5-man grouping is the most perfect assembly of basketball talent that I can remember seeing in terms of reaching the value higher than the sum of their parts, right? And Jokic is the best player in the world, but each of those role players next to him is immaculately a perfect fit for what they need out of that position. And I thought the Thunder just destroying the Nuggets in Denver was a strong indicator of just how important Aaron Gordon is to this particular team. Number 7, the Sacramento Kings. They lost to the Blazers, but they beat the Hawks and Grizz. Easier stretch in their schedule, so I wanted to just take a second to shout out De'Aaron Fox. Doesn't get nearly enough credit for massively increasing his scoring volume while not dropping in efficiency. Went from 25 points per game last year to 30 this year while staying at 60% true shooting. And it's on the strength of him just turning into a dead-eye jump shooter. Not just that, but like a high-volume guy who's hunting those shots. Like there was a clip going around on Twitter the other day of De'Aaron Fox shooting like an early clock pull-up 30-footer, I think, against the Grizzlies. And it was in like the early first quarter, and everyone's like, oh my gosh, what is De'Aaron Fox doing? People don't realize he's just hunting jump shots now. He's attempting 10 threes per game over his last 11 games and hitting them at a 45% clip. Like, not just off the catch either. In that span, 6 pull-up threes a game, 6 of them. And he's making them at a 41% clip. This guy was already a star based on his ability to beat people off the dribble, to make that floater, some of the mid-range pull-up jump shooting, and the finishing at the rim. If this dude is now just like a dead-eye pull-up three-point shooter, like now we're talking about a guy that can enter into the realm of top-tier superstardom. He is a capable, if not excellent, point of attack defender when he's locked in. This is a dude I've seen in the postseason. No one can keep him in front off the dribble. Now he's adding not just a good jump shot, but one of the most effective jump shots in the league this year. He's up over 1.1 points per shot attempt in both catch and shoots and pull-up jump shots this year. This is incredibly high-level shooting paired with one of the best downhill athletes in the league. So shout out to De'Aaron Fox, legitimately one of the most improved players in the league this year. Number 6, the Philadelphia 76ers. They beat the Magic Rockets and lost to the Bulls, but Embiid's been out. But it looks like Joel Embiid will be returning tonight against the Bulls again. Tyrese Maxey's efficiencies tanked a little bit, but he's still scoring at a high volume. Number 5, the Milwaukee Bucks. They beat the Nets and the Cavs, but lost to the Pacers. Giannis continues to obliterate everyone, but Dame has cooled way off again. In the last 6 games, 22 points per game, 39% from the field and 33% from 3. As I mentioned in the Pacers-Bucks breakdown earlier in today's show, I don't think their defense is going to be very good, and so they need to find a way to get Dame into a groove, a consistent groove offensively. Number 4, the Los Angeles Clippers. Kawhi Leonard is back, and they are back to winning. They have an undefeated week, capped off with an impressive handling of the Miami Heat yesterday. 17-5 since November 16th, which is the second best record in the league, second to the Celtics over that span. The offense has come around. Remember I was talking about early, even when they were winning, I was like, watch out. Their offense hasn't even really gotten going. Well, they're third in offense over their last 10 games, seventh in offense since November 16th in that 17-5 stretch. James Harden is the guy I wanted to shout out here. What I said before the trade, and this is something I feel very strongly about, James Harden has limitations when we get to the postseason, and they're real. Can't finish at the rim, doesn't make enough pull-up threes to be a super efficient scorer, really inefficient in his impact on a night-to-night basis, bad defensive player, right? But he is still one of the very best regular season innings eaters in the league, and there is real value in there. 20 points, 5 rebounds, and 10 assists per game since November 16th. 47% from the field, 45% from 3, and 2.6 stocks per game. Excellent basketball from James Harden, especially helping to float the ship while Kawhi Leonard has been out. Number 3, the Minnesota Timberwolves. They're starting to drop some games in this intense stretch of their schedule. They're 7-4 in their last 11, but all the losses are in really tough games. At New Orleans, tough place to win. At Philly, tough place to win. At Oklahoma City, tough place to win. In Madison Square Garden, tough place to win. I actually think, all things considered, we knew this stretch was really tough, but I think they've held up pretty well. Like I talked about earlier, when right before this actual stretch of their schedule, I was saying don't expect them to go undefeated, but if you're comfortably over 500 in that stretch, it's a really strong indicator of a championship threat. I thought they've demonstrated it to that point. Main concern, though, is just their half-court offense. They only score 0.99 points per half-court possession, or 0.985, points per half-court possession. That ranks 18th in the NBA. I would like to see them get that up over 100. That, to me, is kind of like a prerequisite to be able to score in the playoffs. That's my main concern for them at this point. You've seen it before, like teams just compact the paint on them and force them into taking jump shots. And like when Ant's making all of his pull-up jump shots, it looks good, but they can get into some ruts offensively. But holding up pretty well over a tough schedule. Number 2, Oklahoma City Thunder. Undefeated week with all quality wins. They beat the Knicks, the Nets, and went into Denver and smacked the Nuggets, so we've moved them all the way up to number 2. They have won 7 of their last 8 games. They beat the Nuggets twice in that span. They beat the Timberwolves. They beat the Clippers. They beat the Knicks, playing excellent basketball. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander's playing like an MVP, 32, 6, and 6 on 55% shooting over that span, over that 8-game span. Chet, last 8 games, 20 points per game, 59% shooting, and 47% from 3. The dude is exploding. I think he's a superstar in the making. I think he has the potential to be one of the best players in the league one day. And Jalen Williams just quietly putting up 20 points per game on 57% from the field and 52% from 3. This team has a super, super bright future. 123 offensive rating over the last 8 games. Number 1 in half-court offense for the season, according to Cleaning the Glass. Number 3 in half-court defense. Number 1, where they always have been, or for the most part this year, the Boston Celtics. They've had a really weak schedule this week, but they handled their business. They beat the Pistons, the Raptors, and the Spurs. The Celtics have played a much tougher schedule to this point than both Philly and Milwaukee. And despite that, they are 2.5 games up on the Bucks and 4 games up on the Sixers. They have the 5th easiest remaining schedule. So get ready for a lot more weeks like this. And look for the Celtics to run away with the number 1 overall seed. As I said before the season, I think you're going to see a hefty gap between them and everybody else by the time we get to the end. The only reason it's looked as close as it has is the Celtics have had a very front-loaded schedule when it comes to the tougher games, and their peers, the Sixers and the Bucks, have played 2 of the easiest schedules in the league. Fueled in large part because the bottom of the Eastern Conference is super weak, but Boston gets to take the benefit of that down the stretch. So look for Boston to run away in the standings for the rest of the year. We will be back tomorrow. Big time game. We got Thunder Celtics. Going to be covering that one. A couple other games from tonight as well. As always, I appreciate your guys' support, and I will see you then.